the moment you do your work, you probably think you're sitting there and you know what to do. And once someone gave you a good introduction to work, you probably know what to do. So the question is, how much control do you need? Do you need leaders sitting behind you looking what you do, or do you talk once per week, once per day, once per month, once per year, or not at all and only looking for the results? The main issue here is the topic of control mentality becomes worse by the day, especially in remote work environments. And this is why we have to raise the question, how much control is good and necessary at work? That's our topic for today. And there's a reason, of course, why we have this topic. Last week, there was a moment where one aspect went viral, and the comments showed that the issue is not only existing in that company. And the issue was the following. An IT member leaked a certain software at a company because the IT member thought it's unbearable that this is still done, especially as it was done behind the backs of employees. So I fully agree that this is, of course, not acceptable. In many countries, that would be illegal, of course. And the issue here was that the leadership team decided to install a software, and the software did the following. They took a screenshot of your screen every 10 seconds, and the software counted not only how many keys you pressed during on your keyboard, but also how many mouse clicks you did. Don't ask me what mouse clicks and keyboard strokes have to do with work quality. No one knows, but I think some managers think having any kind of number is always a good idea, which is, of course, plain nonsense. And taking screenshots without anyone knowing, of course, is unacceptable, not even talking about the pressure people have at work in these places. The whole aspect went viral on social media, and looking into the comments, you saw this is not a problem which you only see in the US, where most people would locate the issue. It's a problem that you have around the world. Many comments showed stories, and many of these stories came from Europe, from different regions in Europe, but they came from all over the world, basically stating the same story happening over and over again. Leaders think that more control is needed because we now work more flexibly from home or from anywhere. The worst case of it, of course, is micromanagement, where on operational level, people simply ask, what have you done here? What have you done there? This includes one of the worst moments which I saw in real world practice, where people, when they work from home, had to fill out Microsoft Excel sheets, taking detailed notes. What have they done 8 a.m. in the morning, 8:30, 8:45? So they had to log what they do by 15 minutes exactly, which is, of course, a catastrophic idea by the leadership team. So now, of course, we have to stop only saying this is bad, that is bad. We have to say how to do it better, because one aspect is very important. It is not the leader's fault only, at least not every leader's or any leader's fault. It is not every leader's fault, let's put it that way, because sometimes we have to wonder, what have organizations done to actually qualify the leaders to deal with the new situation? Because let's face it, a remote leadership scenario doesn't magically, miraculously just go into your brain overnight and you suddenly know how to do remote leadership. Remote leadership, with the research done by Professor Cedal Neely, who has written an excellent book called Remote Work Revolution. She's professor at the Harvard University. And she looked into science, and it's very complex what is happening there. We now have to see, what have people received as a qualification to deal with the new situation? Often you hear, well, they haven't received anything. And that, of course, is an issue. And of course, some people now already get ready with the argument I'm expecting right now. They say, we would love to do some qualifications, but we do not have the money. Okay, here's the reality. I'm now going to give you two examples, a great one and a bad one, of what has been done in the past. These are projects where I participated. So the positive example, there was an institution and they saw that remote leadership will be an aspect of the future, and they have to qualify their leaders early. So there were 10 seminars set up, 20 days where leaders were taken off their shifts, off their work. So they had 2 full days to learn remote leadership. The whole aspect was delivered online. And this delivery online meant that they could learn from wherever they were, experience, work from home, work from anywhere by themselves. And now, of course, you might say, still great, Niels, but we don't have the money. Let me finish. The organization that delivered, that wanted to have this training, booked and paid for it, was a publicly run hospital in a rural area. These are probably the most underfunded public hospitals you have seen, and they have the money to do this training. So when you do not have the funds, You either lie, which means you don't want to spend the money, or you don't run your business properly, or when you are hit by a pandemic or the rise of energy crisis, et cetera, when you say we can't invest, so we're not going to invest, please just do the calculation. How much do you have to pay to replace people leaving? And suddenly you will see that the investment doing a proper training is way, way lower. Very important now is that when you see this positive example of a publicly run public hospital in a rural area, you might think, so what's the negative example then? The negative example is a company that works in, it's a recruitment company. It's a temp agency, no matter how you want to call it. They allow people to work for different companies. They transfer people to different companies, normally on temp contracts, many of them not highly qualified, but there is quite a high profit margin in there when you do it properly. However, they say we have an issue in this industry. More and more people decide not to work in the industry, either leave the industry or don't even enter it. They have a huge problem finding new talent in the space of temp agencies, recruiting staff agencies, however you want to call these companies. And then we got their reaction when people said, okay, look, people now are working from home, so you don't need big offices, you save on rent, which is good for the profit margin, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then people said, so what about qualification? And then the answer was, well, we don't do soft skills. We only do hard skills, employment law, contract law, what you need for work. And I'm now going to be very polite here. And the politest way I can put it is, in this industry, when you behave like that, you really deserve that you go out of business. When you act in this way and say no qualification except the bare minimum you need for work, then you shouldn't be surprised that people decide to go somewhere else. It is the obviously right decision to do so, especially with the talent situation we have on the market right now. And it doesn't look like it. It doesn't look like the tables are going to turn anytime soon. Of course, we now have to see, well, we do certain training, employment law, contract law, isn't that worth something? And we now have to see what is a proper learning offer where people can really see what is development. There are three main ingredients you need. So number one, it must be voluntarily. When you say, hey, here's a training on GDPR or here's a training on money laundry laws because we have to do that because we have banking clients, this is not a learning offer because it is not done voluntarily. Number two, people need to see from the training, what is the benefit for them? This WeFM, as Jeffrey Gitomer said, what's in it for me? So what can they use afterwards, internally and externally, in the organization, outside the organization, after the training? And normally when you have some sort of, we have a training on the new XYZ law, the benefit of that is you stay compliant within the law, but people have to do that anyway. It is not a learning offer when it's basic qualification that is needed to do the job properly. You have to give them this qualification anyway. And third, a proper learning offer means that the knowledge is transferable. And of course, now some people will immediately say, whoa, Niels. When I qualify people, what does it cost me if I qualify them and they leave? And that already is the wrong question. The right question is, what will they cost you if you don't qualify them and they stay? Meaning you work with not motivated and non-qualified staff trying to impress clients, probably not the best idea. So the transfer of knowledge must be an offer, must be an option. And also when people, for example, do a conflict management training and let's say they see aspects which they can use in their private life or in their football or golf or basketball or whatever club, then they will appreciate that you have done the training with them. And by the way, when you now say, well, we offer this training, but they first have to sign a contract that they have to stay at least for 2 years or have to pay back money, etc. First, in many countries, that's illegal, especially in Europe. Second, it is shameful to do that because you already communicate that you do not trust people, which means the whole learning offer immediately turns into, this is just something I am now going to use to my maximum advantage and hold against you, and I will leave as soon as I can. So you basically push people out. And third, do you want to have the PR on the market where people say, I am an employee on some mid-level position, and now my employer asks for a 5-digit amount of money back while they paid me a fraction of that per quarter of the year or per half term of the year? Probably not. So you need to see what is the specific learning offer you have done. And many organizations, and especially in the German-speaking market, I can tell you, And there are companies who give the appropriate level, which is somewhere between 10 to 20 days per year, probably a bit more. And some companies have 4, 3, 2, 1. And by the way, a professional training means you have professionals there. There are many really bad tendencies on the market. And one of the worst at the moment are the so-called lunch and learn. It means that, so first, someone takes your lunchtime away. So suddenly you have to do learning, which is working time, in your spare time, which is your lunch break. And this lunch and learn often is some employee who knows 5% more on a certain topic than someone else, put a PowerPoint together, normally in their spare time, and talks about that, never been professionally qualified to present, to be a trainer or anything like that. They just stand in front of you, blah, 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 down whatever's written on the slide, and then they call it training offer or learning offer. Don't be ridiculous. That has nothing to do with a learning offer. Learning offer must be voluntary, high benefit internally and externally, and it must have transferable knowledge and trust from your side. When you send people on, let's say, you give them a project management qualification, give them a green belt or a yellow belt qualification, that is something where people say, wow, people send me on a training and I travel there and I have the hotel and I have the evenings off so I can do something. I can see the city, whatever it is. People see that you trust them, which creates an emotional bond. And this is what people motivates. They will be more motivated coming back and they will trust you more. However, there are certain issues which we often see. Then people come back and suddenly you have the control mechanisms again, which means, oh, by coincidence, there's a call in the morning and a call in the evening when you work from home. Of course, pure coincidence, not controlling if you're still working. Or you have by coincidence meetings in the morning and in the afternoon. And or even that is one of the worst parts when people say, oh, when you start working, just put in our group chat that you're there. Hello, good morning. And when you go to break, just put in there like, hey, I'm having a break. And when you're back, just put in there, hey, I'm back from the break. So they're basically tracking you minute by minute. As long as you are unable to trust people, you will not succeed in today's talent market. And there is no doubt about that. You have to qualify people, trust them. And when you now want to say, what can I do when we're not in a great situation? Or when you say, hey, we're doing, let's say, mediocre. Or when you say, hey, we're doing quite well, but how can we get better? All of these options focus on one, how to deal with the future and how much control is necessary and appropriate. So first, what you should do is called a team relaunch, because let's look at the facts. We all came to this whole remote work scenario due to the pandemic. No one expected this to happen. It simply meant that suddenly we sat at home, had to go online if we wanted or not. And you need a proper team relaunch. And this team relaunch means that you need a structured approach to leadership. And that is done that was researched by Richard Hackman from Harvard University. So first, I highly recommend you to read Richard Hackman's books about team building. The books are brilliant. They are scientifically founded, scientific foundation, still very practice oriented. And they give you very specific advice on what you should do with your teams, not based on opinion, because that's what 90% of the books do, but based on facts. So step number one, you do a proper team relaunch. Take 2 days off where you all go somewhere, probably externally, or when you have excellent rooms, not the shabby meeting room in the cellar, please. Do something proper, because this team relaunch will decide how will you do in the future. That's step number one, team relaunch. During the team relaunch, which is step number two, you have to check what is the leadership culture, the organizational culture, and also what are the qualifications we need to succeed in the future market. Internal qualifications, external qualification methods or measures. You have to look at where are we, where do we need to be, and the delta in between. That is what you need to bridge. And by the way, it must be bridged with trust. No paperwork where you tell people if we qualify you, you have to stay for another XYZ years. That is leadership from the 1970s, 80s, 90s, where talent was not scarce at all, and you could find enough people around the corner. These times are over, and it doesn't look like it's going to change anytime soon. So step number two, look at leadership culture, organizational culture, and the qualifications you need to fulfill these goals. And step number three, when you now put everything in place, you work, please, you work based on facts, not based on opinion, because when you want to succeed with the right level of control, or maybe no control or very little control, which is what I focusing on results is what I recommend organizations to do. You have to give them more freedom, more flexibility. And when you talk about new work, because now we have 1, more freedom, 2, more flexibility. And when you 3, claim that you focus on new work means participation. And the participation cannot be that someone is going to control you and you say thank you at the end after you were controlled by whatever means were in place inappropriately. I know this can be quite frustrating to hear, because sometimes you might now sit there and say, well, I just think we are not doing well. So where can I just start? Or you might say, hey, Niels, I have questions and I need these questions answered. Is there any way where I can find advice? And yes, of course, there is. So first, you can go to expert.nb-networks.com. When you put your email address in there, you will get a weekly email every Wednesday morning, 100% content, guaranteed ad-free. It's an ad-free guarantee there. Everything I publish during that week is available for free, no charge, via that email, and only via that email. You might find my content somewhere else behind a paywall. With the weekly email, you get everything for free and everything in one email. It's 100% content. Of course, when you now say, I have a specific question, I have a specific situation, can we talk? Can we talk confidentially? Of course we can. The last weeks were very productive. I thank you all very much for that. We had great calls. And once more, the leadership podcast, I just published that on LinkedIn and social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. You can find it there when you follow Niels Brabandt or NB Networks. You will see that. Once more, the Leadership Podcast went into top 30, top 100, top 150, top 200 in 3 different countries. Once more, we went into top ranks. So thank you very much for continuously listening to the Leadership Podcast. I am very happy about this, and I never thought that this is ever going to happen. When you now have questions, just send me an email, nb@nb-networks.com, and then we can have a chat. I had many great chats in the last weeks. Of course, when you now say, hey, I have something very specific, training, speaking, coaching, or consulting, or we need mentoring, project interim management, or hey, we have an event, can you host it or can you speak there? Yeah, of course, we can talk about that as well. But we can also simply chat about what you want to know. nb@nb-networks.com. Looking forward to hearing from you, either via email or you can contact me on social media, preferably on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. These are the main channels where you can reach out. I am on Twitter, but not that often. So there, of course, you can also reach out to me. The most important aspect now is that you apply what you heard in this podcast, because only when you apply what you heard, you will see the positive change for which you are looking in your organization. I wish you all the best implementing these steps in your organization. I'm always happy to help you doing so. And at the end of this podcast, there's only one thing for me left to say. Thank you very much for your time.